name is Kathy Martin, and I'm the creator of PreAlgebraTeachers.com. I just wanted to record a quick video for you to show you how I teach adding integers with my students. I've gotten a lot of requests lately on how I do this, where my students learn how to add integers and how to retain the adding integers rules. So keep on watching if you want to see how I teach this concept in my classroom. So when I first introduce integers, I like to create what I call chips. So as you can see, these are, I have green for positive and red for negative. And you can create these any way that you want. You can go to your local hardware store and buy little positive and negative chips and cut them out, but I don't have time for that. So what I did was I just cut out strips of colored paper, one green, one red. You don't even need to use the same colors that I do, but I picked green and I picked red. And I use these to introduce negative integers, or adding negative integers. So what I do is you could do what I do and project these chips using a document camera if you have one, or you can create a class set and give, chips to each one of your students, or if you have student, teacher's assistants who can do that and cut them out, that's great. However way you like to do this. So I project these chips and each question on my document camera so the whole class can see it. And I'll just start with really small numbers. So for example, I have -1 and +3. So I will put a -1 chip up, and then I will also have 3 positive chips. And I will tell my students, okay, so a negative and a positive zero out. They cancel each other, okay? So these kind of go away. So what do we have left? Okay, +2. And then we will just continue to do more examples. So we'll do another one like -2 plus -3. Okay, so now we have 2 negatives here. And then I will bring up 3 negatives here. And I will show my class. Okay, since this is 2 negatives, we have no zeroing out. Nothing zeroes out. So I'm going to add them all up. I got 5 negatives. So my answer is going to be -5. And we'll go back and forth and we'll do several problems, because especially if this is a new concept that you are teaching, you want to make sure that we do a lot of examples, we do a lot of visuals. So in this example, I have -2, and then positive +2. So these zero out, and what do I have left? Nothing. So I will do lots and lots of examples. And as we continue, then we'll start to talk about, okay, so what do you notice if I have an example like this? All right, so if I have 5 negatives, so there's 5 negatives, and then here's a positive. Okay, so this zeroes out. So what do I have left? Okay, so -4. So we'll talk about how your answer is going to take the sign of the bigger absolute value. So in this case, the bigger absolute value is going to be 5. So since 5 here is negative, the negative is going to travel into my answer. So my answer is going to be -4. So, and again, we will continue to do more examples. So if I have a -2 plus 3, I will have 2 negatives here, 3 positives. And again, this zeroes out, this zeroes out. So what am I left with? +1. So I can see, okay, if they're different signs, I'm going to subtract them, and my sum is going to take the sign of the bigger absolute value. So in this case, the absolute value of +3 is going to be bigger, and since it's positive, my answer is going to be positive. So we will do a lot of examples where we have different signs, and I like, we eventually get to a point where my students see, okay, well, different signs. What do I notice? I notice that when they're different, this zeroes out, there's zeroes out, and I'm left with
2. So it looks like I'm subtracting. And again, -4, it has the bigger absolute value. So my answer is going to be negative. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about what happens when there's the same sign. So I have -1 plus -2. So if here's -1 and here's -2, what happens? Well, it looks like I combine them, I add them up, and I keep the negative. So we'll talk about, and we'll do more examples. So if I have -5 plus -1, again, so there's your -5. All right, so there it is. And then there's your 1. Oh, look, again, I'm noticing I'm going to add them and keep. So once we've worked through a lot of problems, we're really using the chips as manipulatives to really give us a visual. Once my students graduate, so to speak, from the chips, I will give them the adding integer rules, which goes a little bit like this. It's a super fun rhyme, and it really seems to work for my students. So it says, same sign, add and keep, the negative, different sign, subtract. Take the sign of the bigger absolute value, then your answer will be exact. Once I feel like my students no longer need the chips, then this is the rhyme that I will teach them. So when they start to see examples and you get into a little bit bigger numbers, like for example, if I give them 17 plus 11, this is a much bigger number than what they've probably been used to seeing. So without the chips, it's a little bit more difficult, but I will tell them, okay, you got a -17 and you have a +7. Is it same sign or different? So the hope is that they recognize there are different signs. So I'll ask them, okay, they're different signs. What's the rule? Okay, subtract, take the sign of the bigger value. Perfect. If they're given something like this, -20 plus -30. Okay, is it same sign or different? Same? All right, add and keep. I really like to use this rhyme to help my students reiterate and to help remember the sign rules. I've actually created a much prettier version of this in a little poster form that you can print out. If you're a member of our community, you can find the poster in our forums where I actually have it printed out and hung up on my walls, and I refer to it all the time. So that is where you can find it. So you can print it out for your students and use this rhyme to help your students better understand the adding integer rules.
I hope this video has given you some ideas and strategies to use in your classroom on how to teach your students how to add integers. I know it's a very, very tough concept for students, but this has worked for me and I know it's gonna work for you. If you have any other questions, let me know. Bye.